All right, welcome to lesson 2 of this course, the course on meaning. But already, last lesson, a week ago, we said that there's more to meaning that meets the eye. In fact, this is going to be the moment where the course is going to shift from being a course on meaning to being a course on something else. And we're going to begin by looking at this image here. Two images on the screen, or two images in your book on page 36. Can you figure out what these two devices are? What are they? What are their purpose? Okay. Don't say it. Write it down and have a couple questions that you are going to answer as you write it down. And we're going to compare notes afterwards. Okay. Question is, what exactly are these things? Number 2, how did you deduce what these things are? In other words, what is your thought process? Is it the color? Is it the shape? Is it the size? Is it the way they look compared one to the other? How is it that you've deduced what exactly they are? And lastly, it's very possible that you have an opinion about what it is, and somebody else has another opinion, and they're two completely different opinions. Can both opinions be equally valid as to what they are if they're two completely different opinions? Since we don't know what it is, nobody knows. So as I said, this is your what? Mine. Right. Exactly. In other words, all opinions are valid as long as they're yours, right? Exactly right. It's like the old, you can have the Model T in any color you want as long as it's black, right? So the bottom line is, write down these 3 questions. Okay, the answers to these 3 questions. An opening exercise that we will come to revisit, and you will understand the value and the importance of this exercise shortly. In a pen, check over there in the white, in those white things, right in that little rig. Yeah, in and around you might find some implement. Okay. Now, let's recap where we were last week. Last week, at the very end of the class, we threw in a curveball after giving a very comprehensive, quite I think a very satisfying exploration as to how to bring meaning into one's life, especially as we live here in the United States, and we can have pretty much anything your heart's desire within an instant. Right? Instacart. We'll literally drop it off. And if you can't get it on Instacart, then you'll have to wait, God forbid, an entire day to get it from Amazon. Whatever the world has to purvey, you can have at your door pretty darn quickly. And yet, we very quickly figured out that in having things and having peak wealth or peak experiences doesn't necessarily cause a person to feel that their life is full. And so we started talking about meaning. That meaning and meaningful experiences are what makes a person feel full. And we went in and we described, in particular, those include growth, right? We use the tree as our analog to give us a clarity as to what it is that would give a human being meaning. And we said a person's like a tree in that way, that for a tree, it's meaningful to grow, it's meaningful to produce, it's meaningful to share, right? And it's meaningful to have relationships. And if what it is that you are experiencing or pursuing falls in any of those 4 buckets, you're going to have a more meaningful life, right? And that was, we were ready to walk away feeling very satisfied. Lesson 1 gave me a lot to chew over, a lot to think about, a lot to prioritize what I end up doing. I shouldn't necessarily pursue the Lamborghini. I should pursue doing something with my family, etc. Right? And then yet, right as soon as we were about to leave, we threw in a serious curveball. Because we looked at the opening 2 passages of the wisest man who ever lived, and not only that, the most successful person probably who ever lived in a way. I mean, by many metrics, you can definitely could make a fair argument that Shlomo HaMelech was not only the wisest, but the most successful person who ever lived, and we'll talk in a moment about all the things that he's accomplished. And yet he opens up his great work of Ecclesiastes, his great philosophical work, Hevel Havalim Hakol Havel. Right? And let's look again at the quotes that he gave us. First, he laments the fact that he achieved peak success. Peak success, and in peak success, he did not find fullness. He felt quite empty, right? As we talked about, many people do. Celebrities in particular arrive at peak success very early in their life and then go through a crisis, an existential crisis, which causes many of them to try and escape through drugs or through, God forbid, even suicide. Among other people that do that come to the same thing, or they are desperately looking for something and hopefully they fall on meaning, right? So Shlomo Melech says in text 1a, I've achieved peak success and found it to be empty, right? Let's look at this again. I amassed great wealth. I built homes, planted vineyards. I designed gardens and orchards filled with every kind of fruit tree. I made reservoirs to water entire groves of trees. I acquired male and female servants and had more cattle, herds, and flock than anyone before me in Jerusalem. I piled up silver and gold in the treasures of kings and provinces. I brought in male and female singers and every luxury people could desire, chests and chests of it. I became wealthier than anyone who came before me in Jerusalem, and I still had my wisdom. I didn't hold back from anything my eyes wanted. I didn't deny myself any pleasure. I took joy in everything I achieved. But in the end, that momentary joy was all I really got from it. Then I look back at all I had worked for, everything I had built and gained, and it was all pointless, just chasing the wind. Nothing truly lasts under the sun. Now, it's interesting because while I can't claim to be any particular philosopher, I had the same existential crisis at the age of 9. I remember it very distinctly. And it was on my way back from Six Flags, where many people have great moments of epiphanies.
What happened to your great wealth?
And here was my moment of great wealth, as it were. I was on the way back from Six Flags, and I made the most terrible mistake that you can ever make whenever you go to an amusement park. It's a very serious mistake. And so one of the things that as a parent or a grandparent, you have a great responsibility to teach your children. It's one of the very important facts of life. And it is, don't go on a water ride right before the end of the day. I'm sitting in the bus on my way back. I am cold and miserable. And it hit me. I just invested an entire day. This is a 9-year-old. An entire day at one of the happiest places on earth. An amusement park. It's quite literally called an amusement park. And billions of dollars were spent on entertaining me. And I spent an entire day invested. What? Yeah, well, yes, we're not, but maybe for this reason. Because as it is, not 10 minutes after I spent an entire day engaged in entertainment and pursuing joy and pleasure, I am now cold and miserable and ruining this moment. And at 9, I'm like, where did that entire day of pleasure just go? Where did it go? I'm 10 minutes removed from it and I'm miserable. So what does it mean? What does it all mean? What did this whole day mean if right now I am cold and miserable? It's all over. It's gone. Nothing to show for it except misery and cold. And again, at 9 years old, I come to a little bit of this same kind of exercise. And he writes, all I had was the joy in the moment, says Shlomo Melech. But now what do I have to show for it? Right? And here's the truth about the hedonistic treadmill, right? Happiness, right, boosted by material success is not permanent, right? We quickly adapt and that becomes the new baseline. So it's easy come, easy go, and not easy go in the sense that I lost it, but ultimately it doesn't last on its own. So Shlomo Melech says, I got to peak success and was empty. So we said that's where the answer to it is. We can all be very proud that we took lesson 1 of the course known as Kabbalah of meaning, and we have the answer, Shlomo Melech. It's because what you were pursuing was success and pleasure and comfort and all these things and wealth. And even as you arrived at the peak of it, you felt empty because peak success does not bring fulfillment.
I wouldn't call it success.
We're calling it because he not only amassed these things, but he was successful. He was successful in amassing all these things. It's not he more, as we've talked about with celebrities. More, he reached the top of that mountain. It's like certain people could say, "I have money, but the reason I'm not that happy is because I don't have more." He was successful in amassing wealth. He got to the top of that. He got to the top of notoriety and fame and all these things. Success, right? They said, but because you were pursuing success, you weren't pursuing meaning. And a lot of times, here's the thing: we now have learned, and most of us have an inclination that yes, life is not just about success. Because you know what? To a certain degree, people in the first world and in a place like this know what that feeling of emptiness is like. It's why many people go through a midlife crisis, is because I have achieved success, or at least I got close enough to it, to that plateau, to understand that there's no there there. And then I'm kind of going through the existential crisis of midlife crisis, right? People that live in the third world generally don't have midlife crisis because they never get to that moment of like that top of the mountain or close enough to the top of the mountain to realize that this existential issue, that up there you're not going to find that sense of fulfillment. But here's what happens next. Shlomo HaMelech then says that he pursues meaning. And unlike most of us, he arrives at peak meaning and still feels empty. And now he's dealing with a whole different level of existential crisis. Text 1b. Yes.
Any definition of meaning?
Good. Hold that. Okay, hold that. But he moves past peak success and he gets into what we'll call, or what we've been right now referring to as articulating as peak meaning. So 1b, I turn my thoughts to understanding wisdom and also madness and foolishness. I saw the wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. A wise person sees where they are going, but a fool stumbles in the dark. But I also realize that the same fate awaits them both. So I thought, if I end up just like the fool, what's the point of being wise? And I saw that this too is meaningless, because neither the wise nor the foolish are remembered for a long time. In time, both are forgotten. And in the end, the wise person dies just like the fool. That made me hate life. Everything happens under the sun seems so pointless, just chasing the wind. Now, in terms of not only success, but living a life of meaning, let's look at his credentials. Reigned from the years of, don't forget, this goes backwards because it's before the Common Era, so it's moving towards zero, but from 863 to 797, reigned for 60 years. Let's not get into that discussion. If you're arguing the dates, could be you're right. I don't know. Let's not dwell on that. But he reigned for a nice long time, Shlomo Melech, and was obviously incredibly did an incredible amount to enhance not only his life but the life of his subjects in an incredibly powerful way. He brought unprecedented peace to the land of Israel. He fortified its infrastructure, its trade, making Israel the center of the world. All of Africa, including the Queen of Sheba, was coming to the land of Israel to establish diplomatic ties. He composed thousands of proverbs and songs, more than his father. And of course, the pinnacle of his success, he constructed the Beit HaMikdash, the house that will always be called under his Solomon's temple. This is a man who lived peak meaning. How can you say these words that you've come to hate life and that everything is just chasing the wind? All this, just chasing the wind? What was he missing?
He recognized that all the things that he did have a short life. Even the temple was destroyed. And all also he faced death. Just like every
So then, what hope is there for the rest of us? So we all become nihilistic? Is that what you're saying? That Shlomo Melech is it? Shlomo Melech is encouraging us all to be nihilistic.
well,
If nothing has
in
meaning,
the end, he said the only thing is
don't jump ahead. If you're going to do that, and you're going to tell the end of the movie, you got to say spoiler alert, right? But Nachmanides says you're not missing. It's not like you when you read those words and you're perplexed by it, and you're saying, "Wait a minute, is this what Shlomo Melech is saying?" Comes Nachmanides and says, "Yeah, that's exactly what Shlomo Melech is saying. You're reading him right." Text 2. Futility of futilities, says Kohelet. Futility of futilities, all is futile. If any other person had said this, we would have said they never amassed even 2 coins in their life, yet they speak about the wealth of the world and declare it futility, right? Most people speak about something as if they really know a lot about it, right? Most of us, we can always dismiss any kind of generalization that they'll say about things because it's like, yeah, well, you know what's going on. You're really on the outside of it, right? But Shlomo, about whom it is written, the king made silver in Jerusalem as abundant as stones, is indeed suited to render all as futility of futilities. Behold, Solomon the ruler, the powerful one, the wise, authored this entire book to render the whole world as meaningless and to tell us that everything is utterly futile. So yes, you are reading it correctly. Shlomo Melech is saying all is futile. Now it's interesting that this is not just the existential crisis of one individual man, or even the existential crisis of one individual Jewish philosopher. No, another great philosopher, the kind of which affected Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and many other millions, countless millions of people. A fellow named Leo Tolstoy, right? Author of War and Peace, author of Anna Karenina, other such great works, wrote the following, and understand that he did not write it before he was successful and well known. He wrote this afterwards. Afterwards. Text 3. 5 years ago, something very strange began to happen to me. At first, I experienced moments of perplexity and arrest of life, as though I did not know what to do or how to live, and I felt lost and became dejected. But this passed, and I went on to live as before. Then these moments of perplexity began to recur oftener and oftener, and always in the same form. They were always expressed by the question, what's it for? What does it lead to? I understand that it was no casual indisposition, but something very important. And if these questions constantly repeated themselves, then they would have to be answered. And I tried to answer them. The questions seemed such stupid, simple, childish questions. But as soon as I touched them and tried to solve them, I at once became convinced that that they were not childish and stupid, but the most important and profound life's questions. And 2, that try as I would, I cannot solve them. Before occupying myself with my Samara estate, the education of my son, or writing of a book, I had to know why I was doing it. All of a sudden, I found myself asking these questions. As long as I did not know why, I could do nothing. I could not live. Amid the thoughts of a state management, which greatly occupied me at that time, the question would suddenly occur to me: well, you have 6,000 destanias of land in Samara government with 300 horses. I want next. And I was quite disconcerted. I did not know what to think. Or when considering my plans for the education of my children, could there be anything more meaningful? I would say to myself, what for? Or when thinking of the fame of my works, thinking of the fame my works would bring me, I said to myself, very well, you'll be more famous than Gogol or Pushkin or Shakespeare or Molière. Or then all the writers in the world. And what of it? And I could find no reply at all. Later, as he writes, he contemplated suicide. Leo Tolstoy. Life was not only filled with success, was filled with meaning. He didn't write just novels of entertainment. He was writing great philosophical works that he knew were affecting people by the millions. This man was living a life of meaning, and yet could not find a reason to live. What's missing? What's missing when you are pursuing growth? You're pursuing productivity, giving, relationships. Is there something more? But how do we sum it up? Turns out that there is something more than meaning. We're going to give it a name. We're going to give it a definition. You see, because here's the thing: the reason you're sitting in this class and asking or tacitly asking me to provide you this answer is because somehow the answer should be in the Torah. And here's the thing, and understand the nuance of the point I'm about to make. That if you came to me and said, Rabbi, I need you to look into the Torah and provide me meaning, I would say to you 100% honestly and 100% correctly, you don't need the Torah for meaning. You heard me correctly. You don't need the Torah for meaning. What? You need the Torah to tell you to spend time with your children? To try and help somebody else? This is the part of the issue with Tikkun Olam, that people think that all of Judaism is Tikkun Olam. If Tikkun Olam means being a mensch, as we talked about in lesson 1, that should be intuitive. That's part of your human instinct as far as Judaism is concerned. Every human being should know to be a mensch, to help people, to be productive, to try and grow, to spend time with relationships. You don't need the Torah for that. So you don't need the Torah for meaning, but we do need the Torah. In the Torah is everything. So what exactly is the Torah if the Torah is not inherently the book of meaning? And I'm going to give you the other word, and it's going to originally sound, okay, Rabbi, you're playing semantics. But as the whole point of this lesson is to show you there is a huge distinction between the word meaning and the word purpose. And that's what this lesson's all about. That's what this course is about. That's what the Torah is all about, not meaning. And this is where Viktor Frankl falls short, because he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. What he should have written is Man's Search for Purpose. Now, part of it is that he did not make the distinction that we're about to make. And many people, it turns out that meaning and purpose, once we find the thing, we could actually say that purpose is the greatest form of meaning. But we first have to understand the difference as we are going to lay it out. And for the secret to true satisfaction in life is understanding this distinction, not just understanding the distinction between pleasure and meaning, but understanding the distinction between meaning and purpose. So here we go. Let's look at a very famous story and a very famous moment of dialogue between two of our greatest Jewish heroes, a holiday that's coming up in the middle future, a holiday of Purim. In the moment of Purim, you have Esther. Esther, who up until this moment seems to be in her position by a series of fortunate, or probably Esther would tell you, unfortunate events. You have a tyrannical, crazy king, Ahasuerus, with zero royal blood in his veins. Happened to be the general of the Persian emperor, who came in and by a stroke of good luck happened to be right at the gates of Babylon when Belshazzar became victim of God's ire, right? The famous Balthazar, Belshazzar, was celebrating the destruction of the temple, and what he believed was the fact that the fallacy of the prophecy that 70 years later the temple would be rebuilt. He counted 70 years, however he counted, because the conquest of Jerusalem happened over a long period of time. It's hard to know where exactly to begin the 70-year count of this prophecy. He believed he calculated correctly, believed that the 70 years were up, believed that the God of the Jews had been conquered by the gods of Babylon, And so he celebrated, and not only that, but decided to stick his finger in the eye of God, right, as it were, by coming down personally in the garments of the Kohen Gadol, by serving his drunken orgy with the cups and the vessels of the temple. And then all of a sudden, famously, what occurred? Where we get the expression, the writing on the wall, right? The hand of God that says you have been judged, and you've been judged, and you've been found wanting. And that night, he dies hoisted on his own petard, as the expression goes, because he issued a lockdown. He says anybody roaming the halls of the kingdom of the palace should be put to death, no questions asked. And when he was on his way to the privy, his soldiers did exactly as they said, as he instructed them to, and they skewered him, no questions asked. And that day, the next morning, the Darius of the Persian Empire rolls right into the decapitated empire of Babylon, and Babylon ceases to exist, and then all of a sudden is all swallowed into the Persian Empire. Darius doesn't last that much longer after this. The whole story of Daniel plays out. Daniel aligns then with Darius. Darius held very highly of his Jewish inherited captive scholar named Daniel, but the others conspired against him. The other ministers conspired against him, but he had to throw Daniel in the lions. Then ultimately, Daniel survives miraculously, and he gets raised to great whatever it is. But then Darius dies. His empire is taken over by his king, by his general Ahasuerus, who becomes the new king of Persia, who is a glutton, a lush, and a womanizer, and decides to throw a feast for 180 days, also for the destruction of the temple and what he believed was the false fruition of the prophecy that said that it will all revert back to Israel. Also, wears the garments of the thing, but he's getting advice from a more wily guy named Haman, right? Whose name is then Memuchan. Memuchan says the way you beat the Jewish God, you can't necessarily beat the Jewish God, but you can beat the Jewish people by having them turn their back on their God. Invite them to the feast, have them celebrate the destruction of their own temple, feed them non-kosher wine, have them come on Shabbat, etc., and God will turn their back on him because they will have turned their back on him. And it's successful. The Jews attend because they say we have to get close with the government no matter what the story is, even if it's a Zora Mamdani or whatever it is. We have to vote. We have to sorry, we had to do one little what's it called modern reference, but the bottom line is, unfortunately, history repeats itself in that regard. Jews attend because they feel it's important to ingratiate themselves, even if it is at the expense of their identity and their relationship with God. Ultimately, at this drunken orgy, Achashverosh calls for his wife Vashti, who was the daughter of Belshazzar, or the granddaughter, depending on which opinion, and says that she should come and prance around naked in front of everybody to show off her beauty, because that's what kind of guy he was. She refuses to do so. She disparages him in public, saying, my grandfather would never act like this. You have no royal blood. You're a commoner, and that's how you can act like in this brutish way. He kills her. At the advice of who? The same Memuchan. Because Memuchan has designs on the whole empire. He wants to become king of it all. And he has a plan that he is from royal blood. Not of royal Persian or Babylonian blood, but royal Amalekite blood. He is descended from the Amalekite king Agag. He is Agagi. And his daughter was going to be, he thinks, a prime option for this Achashverosh, who's desperate to have legitimacy by marrying a woman of royal blood, would marry his daughter, and so he would be one heartbeat away from ruling the kingdom. In the end, his plans are foiled because Achashverosh has a better idea given to him by another advisor. Make a beauty contest so you can pick any girl you want, especially because you're going to taste the goods every night. He loves this idea. And the most beautiful girls of all the kingdom are taken, and which is famously the girl that he picks, a Jewish girl named Hadassah, who was either the niece or the cousin of the great Jewish leader in exile at that time, the exilarch of the Jewish people, named Mordechai. By the way, just as a matter of what's called, what is Mordechai's other name? What is his Persian name? He has a Persian name. We know it. His name was Bilshan, Mordechai Bilshan. So Bilshan and Hadassah, or Mordechai and Esther, however you want to refer to them. Esther is brought to the king. He falls for her. He senses in her also royal blood, which is in fact correct. She was the direct descendant of King Saul, Shaul HaMelech. Then it all goes downhill. Haman becomes the grand vizier. He comes up with a plan to eradicate all the Jews, etc., etc. And Mordechai turns to Esther and says, you got to do this. Now, here's the thing. Let's go analyze how he frames why she has to do this. And you will see the distinction between the two words we just said. Meaning, which is not good enough, and purpose, which is what it's really all about. Page 46, text 4a. Mordechai gave Hatach a copy of the written decree that had been circulating in Shushan, instructing him to show it to Esther and to urge her to go before the king to plead with him and beg for the lives of her people. This is direct quote from the Megillah. Hatach went and delivered Mordechai's message to Esther. Esther then came to Hatach and instructed him to relay her words to Mordechai as follows. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that anyone, man or woman, who enters the king's inner court without being summoned is subject to death, unless the king extends his golden scepter, granting permission to live. And I have not been summoned to the king in 30 days. She says, I can't just come into the king. I have an automatic default death sentence if I do. I have not been summoned. We have to understand, guys, this is not the year 2025 with women's lib and all these things, and a woman, the wife of the king, should be able to just walk in. No, if she would walk in to the king's throne room unbidden, she's as bad as any regular commoner who would have the temerity to do so, except the fact that she should have known better. So she says, I am just as much danger of walking into the king's throne room unbidden than anybody else who would do it. It's an automatic death sentence unless the king had specifically asked. The only reprieve is if he will extend his scepter, granting clemency. So I can't. Here's Esther's message was conveyed to Mordechai. Mordechai sent back this reply to Esther. Don't imagine that you of all the Jews will escape just because you're in the palace. Mordechai says, there's right now an existential threat against the Jewish people. You think that you being in the palace will hide you from it? Rather, if you remain silent at this moment, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another source, but you and your father's house will perish. Now, the simple understanding of that is simply that Mordechai is telling Esther, you think you're at risk by not going to the palace? You're at greater risk. You think you'll be at risk by going into the throne? You're at greater risk if you wouldn't. Because you will then suffer the fate of all the rest of the Jewish people, except the other Jewish people, in theory, can run away and hide. You can't. By the fact that you're in the palace actually makes you more vulnerable to Haman's decree than the rest of us. Right now, you're going to get away with it by dint of the fact that you're hiding your identity, but your identity will eventually be found out, and you will then become the most easily accessible Jew to exterminate. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, it actually ends up being in your best interest to take the risk. So ultimately, what's Mordechai saying to Esther? Let's use it in the terms of our own discussion. The most meaningful move you can make, Esther, for your life right now, even if it's not the easy one, but it's to go into the palace. You have the greatest vested interest in the preservation of your life. That is the most meaningful move. Go into the palace. Go to the throne room. I know that's not what he said. Because here's what he continues. Because that's his point. He made his point. It's a very compelling point, right? That's a smart argument, right? You stand the most to gain by taking this risk. This is the most meaningful move. Even if it's not the easiest move, it's the most meaningful move. But then he doesn't stop there, and he goes further. And he says as follows, text 4b. Umi yodeya im la'et kazot higat lamalchut. Which means, and who knows, perhaps for this very reason you became queen in the first place. Now he's shifted the argument. Now the argument is different. Now the argument is not about meaning. This is not about what benefits you the most. What's his argument now? This is your purpose. It's a different argument. This is not about what's most meaningful to you. This is about what you're there for. And look at her answer. She gets it. And she doesn't get this is the best move for me. She puts herself on the side and says, this is the most important move for my mission and purpose. Look how she says it. Esther said, 4c, Esther said to reply to Mordechai, Lech kenosa, go gather the Jews, right? That expression comes from this moment. That are found to fast for me 3 days and 3 nights, not for the preservation of my life, but rather for the success. How do we know? As it says, and I too and all my maidens will fast likewise. And then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. If it was all about the preservation, how would she say that last line? It's not about the preservation of her life, in a sense, the enhancement of her life, the meaning that it will bring to her life. What is she saying here? There's something greater than me. There's a purpose beyond me. So to really sum it up as follows, here's the key difference between meaning and purpose. I want you to hear this, and you can see it in the figure on page 48, figure 2.1. Meaning is inherently subjective. What is to do something that's meaningful? What's a meaningful pursuit? Anything that, to me, is enriching, inspiring, or beneficial. That's meaningful. That's to fill your life with meaning. For me to pursue something that is enriching, beneficial, or inspiring to me. Purpose is objective. It's pursuing what am I needed for. I don't determine that. I can try and figure that out, but it's beyond me. It's greater than me. It's bigger than me. And as Esther says, if I have to be, in a sense, if I have to devote myself up until the point of self-sacrifice towards this purpose, then so be it. Objective. This is the purpose of my being, my raison d'etre. And this brings something else into play. Let's go back to those photos. I'm going to answer to you what these photos actually are. This is okay, anybody want to guess first? Very good. It's a pit remover. Very good. This is a pit remover. To take pits out of olives, cherries, whatever it is. You put it in the bowl, you press the thing, pop, and out comes the thing. Yep. Okay. What's this? Nothing. AI just created this. This has an objective purpose. This is whatever you want to make of it. Now, here's the thing. On the one hand, you can say, I love this. I'm free to choose whatever I want. Life is whatever I'll make of it. Right? There's a lot of freedom in this. It's a clean canvas. I can put whatever meaning I want here. But there's an inherent pitfall, which Shlomo Melech identifies. Whatever you are going to do then, by definition, is arbitrary. By definition, is arbitrary. Because can I distinctly say that's what it's for? No. You can choose to use it however you want, which might bring pleasure in the moment. But can you have the satisfaction of knowing I'm using it for its defined purpose, for its distinct purpose, for the very reason it was created? No. This has an objective purpose. Sure, you can use it for whatever you want. You want to use it as a hammer, go ahead. It's not going to be good at it. But it has a distinct purpose. And finding and achieving and using it in its purpose brings an inherent satisfaction of using something for the reason it was created, that this can never bring you. And if life is about meaning, then what are you saying about life? That it's inherently empty. That life's inherently empty, and it's left for me to fill it with whatever I find meaningful. But then there's always going to be the niggling thought in the back of your mind. But then it's all still inherently empty and arbitrary. But if you accept, as the Torah says, what Yiddishkeit says, declares that the world was created on purpose. God created the world on purpose, and therefore created the world for purpose. And then he created you on purpose, which means he created you for a purpose. It means that your life's not inherently empty just to be filled with whatever you're going to do it. Your life has already a distinct direction. It has inherent value. Not because what you're going to put in it, but because what God looked around and said, this needs to be done here, and you're the one who needs to do it. You're the one I'm tailor-making to do it. Text 5 and 6, from two of the greatest relatively modern-day philosophers of Judaism. One, hypermodern, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, and one, also of this past century, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Kook. Text 5. Think about it. Every function that was once performed by religion can now be done by something else. In other words, if you want to explain the world, you don't need Genesis, you have science. If you want to control the world, you don't need prayer, you have technology. If you want to prosper, you don't necessarily need to seek God's blessing, you have the global economy. You want to control power, you no longer need prophets, you have liberal democracies and elections. If you're ill, you don't need a priest, you can go to a doctor. If you feel guilty, you don't need to confess, you can go to a psychotherapist instead, right? If you're depressed, right, you don't need faith, you can take a pill, right? If you still need salvation, you can go to today's cathedrals, the shopping center of Britain, or in the case of America, there are malls. Those are modern day cathedrals, right? Those are gone now. I guess we have Amazon instead, or TikTok, right? Or as one American writer calls them, weapons of mass consumption. Religion seems superfluous, redundant, de trop. Why then does it survive? If everything could be done, everything that seemingly religion covered back in the day, in the days of superstition, and now we've evolved. Why have we not evolved past religion? Why is religion actually on the uptick? My answer is simple. Religion survives because it answers three questions that every reflective person must ask. Who am I? Why am I here? How then shall I live? None of those are about meaning. None of those are about meaning. All three of those questions that you inherently ask yourself, deep, dark, at night, etc., or when Shlomo Melech can't ignore, or Leo Tolstoy can't ignore, once they've achieved not only peak success, but peak meaning, is, why am I here? I.e., what's my purpose? That's the question Torah answers. Not what's meaningful. What's my purpose? Because deep down we all feel that. We all know this. And when that question can't be answered, we're still feeling empty. Text 6. Before I was created, during all the limitless time that came before, there was nothing in the world that required me. Had I been needed for any purpose or task, I would have existed earlier. The fact that I wasn't created until that specific moment is proof that there was no need for me until then. My existence was not necessary until it was. And when that time came, I was brought into the world to fulfill a role, to contribute something essential to the perfection of existence. As the Rebbe put it to a woman who once came to him asking these existential questions, the Rebbe said, your birthday is the day God looked at the world and said, This world cannot go a day longer without you in it. You're here on purpose, which means you're here for purpose. And that is what's going to give your life fulfillment. Because the world is not empty waiting for you to fill it with meaningful moments. Rather, the world is waiting for you to understand your place in it. What are you here for? The inventor of this thing is waiting for somebody to use it correctly. Now, automatically, this perspective does a couple things for you, even before you find out what the purpose is. Even before you find out what purpose is, what your purpose is. Just knowing that you have purpose brings a huge amount of self-esteem and confidence in your existence. Why? Because if your entire sense of value is on whether you've filled your life with either objects or pleasures or even meaning, then when you feel that you haven't, or something is blocking you from these, then life is empty and meaningless. But if you understand that the creator of all of existence brought you purposely into the world, then automatically you know something about yourself. What do you know about yourself?
Yeah.
You matter. You matter. You have, even if you haven't yet done it yet, I'm important to this entire thing, or else I wouldn't be here. In the eyes of my creator and the creator of all things, I'm important. Automatically. It's an amazing thing. This, by the way, I just want to give you a sense, automatically means if you feel that, then let me pass this out. We will now understand. You can imagine, I gave the metaphor of the hot rod, right? Last week. And the hot rod, if it could be anthropomorphized, or this, would have a problem just existing. Even if it's a very pleasurable existence. Even, dare I say, it's a meaningful existence. This is a beautiful, poignant song I'm going to play you. Here are the lyrics so that you can follow. Those on Zoom, you're going to have to try to try to hear this as best as possible, because I can't hand you the lyrics. Listen to this song.
With USA Safe
That's the ad. Listen to this song. Follow this.
Was made way back in 1842
I sped this up a bit, just so.
by a humble man, a real God-fearing Jew, who did his work with honesty, feeling and with pride. He was known in Kiev as young Kabbalah scribe. With loving care, his hands so sure and still, he formed me with some parchment, ink, and quill. Each day he would slowly add to me just a few more lines, with words to last till the end of time. And on the day that I was finally complete, the whole town came and filled the narrow street. And they sang and danced and held me high and carried me away to the little wooden shul where I would stay. And then the rabbi held me close against his chest. He spoke out loud and clear to all the rest. He said, no matter if you're very young or even if you're old, live by the words you'll find inside the scroll. 3 days a week they read from me out loud. It filled my soul with joy, it made me proud. They followed each and every verse with fire in their eyes, the words that told them how to live their lives. I watched the generations come and go. I saw the old men die, the children grow. But never in a century did I miss my turn once, or the fathers they had left me with their sons. But the hatred from the west came to Kiev, and they rounded up the Jews who had not fled. But Moshe the shamanist, he was brave and he was bold. He hid me in his cellar, dark and cold. And for years and years I waited all alone. The people of my town to take me home. And they'd sing and dance and hold me high when they carried me away to my little wooden shul where I would stay.
This is the key of the song. Pay attention here.
But it was someone else who found my hiding place. And to America he sent me in a crate. And the men who took me off the boat, they said I was a prize. But they were Jews I did not recognize. And in a case of glass they put me on display, where visitors would look at me and say, how very nice, how beautiful, a stunning work of art. But they knew not what was inside my heart. And across the room I saw upon the shelf some old friends of mine who lived back in Kiev. A silver pair of candlesticks, a menorah made of brass, we'd all become mere echoes of the past. So if you hear my voice, why don't you come along and take me to the place where I belong? And maybe even sing and dance when you carry me away to some little wooden shul where I could stay. And then the rabbi holds me close against his chest. He'll speak out loud and clear to all the rest. He'll say, no matter if you're very young or even if you're old, live by the words you'll find inside this scroll. Live by the words you'll find inside my soul.
Why does that song hit so hard? Because we all understand what it's saying. This Torah scroll was given a very cushy, comfortable place where it could be meaningful and people can look at it and be inspired by it and draw meaning from it, etc., etc. But what's the scroll saying? That's not why I was created. I wasn't created to be looked at and admired and behind plated glass. I want to be in a little shul where people will actually learn from me. That's purpose. That's that sense that we have that says, I'm here for a specific reason. I was created by my fabricator, by my creator. And even if I'm living a life of meaning, But if it's not the life that I was created for, then it's going to carry some emptiness. It's going to carry emptiness because a hammer, as we said, doesn't want to sit comfortably on a couch. It wants to hit a nail because that's why it was created. And this thing wants to be used as a pitter, or whatever the word is. And a Torah wants to be used as a Torah, and we want to know what it is specifically we can do and what we were created to do. And in that, we find our purpose. This is an incredibly empowering and important thing in life. And ultimately, as we said, will give somebody just the idea and this understanding, the shift of focus of instead of pursuing just meaning, even meaningful meaning, but pursuing purpose could change your entire life. Here's a fascinating story. Text 7. This is really a remarkable story. A fellow, a very wealthy chassid of the Alter Rebbe, a scholar, a philanthropist, a do-gooder, etc., etc. And life was heading, and all the chaos and the hecticness where many people of his relatives were relying on him to provide money for them, etc., etc. His own daughter was about to get married, and Dreit the Redel, as it says, the wheel of fortune turns, and he loses everything. And he comes to the Alter Rebbe, a mess. He traveled to the Rebbe, text 7. To Rebbe Shneur Zalman of La'adi, he poured out his heart with many tears and deep anguish. If God has seen fit to afflict me with poverty, I accept the judgment, he said. But how can I, God forbid, remain in debt and fail to repay? How can I not fulfill the promises I made to my family and relatives of the support that I would give them? At my daughter's weddings, I made these promises back when I was wealthy. According to our holy Torah, I had every right to make those commitments. If I now fail to keep them, it will be a desecration of God's name. He cried bitterly over the great punishment that he was being made to endure. With great emotion, he begged the Rebbe to arouse abundant mercy on his behalf from the source of true compassion and kindness, that he may repay his debts and fulfill his promises. After that, he said, I will accept whatever poverty heaven has decreed upon me. He's coming to the Rebbe, not sort of saying, I don't have the fancy food on my plate and I need to have the fancy wagon, or it says, but I make commitments to people. I have to uphold them. I have a person who repays his debts, who takes care of his family and his daughters, etc., etc. If God sees fit to smite me with this judgment, at least let him do so after I already have done what I'm supposed to be doing here. He ended his words. He says, Rabbi, I need to repay all my debts. I need to give my relatives, family members what I promised them. I need to provide for the weddings of my 2 daughters as I promised them. The Rebbe leaned on his holy arms in deep spiritual absorption, listening to the man's cries and pleas. After some time, the Rebbe lifted his holy head and, still absorbed in that intense spiritual state, said, You speak of what you need, but you say nothing about why you are needed. I need to be able to have the money to pay bills. I need. What about what you're needed for? Wait a minute. Where's the empathy? Where's the empathy from the Alter Rebbe here? Where's the solution? Where's the bracha? This is what the Alter Rebbe says here. Suck it up. Me. I need. And in fact, by the way, this is being told by the descendant of the Alter Rebbe, who will eventually be his successor, the 6th Chabad Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was the first. The Rebbe Rayatz was Rav Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, great, obviously heroic leader of the Jewish people in his own day, navigating through the Holocaust and communist Russia, etc. But he writes the story, and he continues, and he says, what happened to this chassid after he hears from the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe says, you're constantly saying what you need. What about what you're needed for? The chassid hears this from the Alter Rebbe, and he faints dead away. And the other chassidim pull him and revive him. But what was shocking is what occurred when they succeeded to revive him. He woke up, remembered what the Alter Rebbe had told him, and was suffused with a spirit of transcendent joy. The Alter Rebbe's words sparked in him an incredible transcendent joy. He immersed himself in Torah study and divine service, says the Alter Rebbe, with a sense of well-being and liberation. Eventually, ultimately, the wheel of fortune turned again. He became successful. He was able to repay all the debts and pay off and his daughter's wedding, etc., etc. But what happened in this story is something very important. The Alter Rebbe reframed his entire perspective on life, moving it from meaning to purpose. This person defined the meaning in his life by being able to support his family, by being able to pay for the wedding, etc., by doing mitzvahs with it. And when those things were cut off for him, his life lost value. All the things he needed, he didn't have. And the Alter Rebbe says, wait a minute, stop for a moment. And stop asking yourself, what do you need out of life? But rather, what are you needed for in this life? And if your creator saw fit to take these things away from you for whatever reason, clearly there's something else you are meant to contribute that's not tied to the money you once had and you no longer had. Go figure that out. Go find the meaning that you now can, the purpose that you can now achieve in this state. Be liberated in the sense that your creator has a purpose for you no matter the circumstance you're in. And in that, you will find not only meaning, but contentment and fulfillment. You don't need these things. Rather, what are you needed for? Ramendel Furtefas was one of the Chassidim who was sent to a Siberian gulag, along with not petty criminals, but people of great wealth and success that the communist government tried to eradicate, wealthy noblemen and landowners and whatever it is. And he would sit around and they would all lament. He would talk about this later, about all the things that they lost and their whole sense of purpose gone and their whole sense of meaning gone. And he was able to feel joy because he turns to them and he says, my goal in life is to serve God. That's my purpose. I can do that just as easily here as I could do it anywhere else. So nothing was taken from me. My life was not based on what I had and the pursuits that I was able to do. I have a purpose. And my creator is the one who defines that purpose. And if I'm in this circumstance or this place, it doesn't mean that has been taken from me. Now my question is, what's my purpose here? What's my purpose in this situation? Because ultimately, who defines what your purpose is? You? Do you define your purpose? No, that's the difference. You define your meaning, but you don't define your purpose. Who defines purpose? The one who gave you the purpose in the first place. When you open up an IKEA set, and we've all done this, right? And you take out some weird shaped item, either what looks like it's supposed to be a tool or part of the thing that's being built. You can go about this one of two ways. You can either be a man, right, and say, I can figure this out, right? And maybe you can. Most likely you won't, right? Or you say, wait a minute. And you come to the very simple understanding that, again, women arrive too faster than men, usually, which is the fabricator had a specific intention for this particular item. How about I go find out, interact in the way that I can with a fabricator to find out how do you interact with a fabricator when it comes to an IKEA set? You read the instruction manual. And then you will find out what is the distinct purpose assigned to this thing and the greatest use of it. That's the purpose of a fabricator. Text 8, that's called going outside the system to understand the system. Within the system, it's very hard to understand the system. You need to go outside it to the one who established the system to get a sense of what this is all about. It's very hard to find out what life's about from within life. You'll be filled with trial and error, running down certain directions and ending up, right? The same thing with this piece, right? Unless usually we all know what this is because we've seen somebody use it, we have some outside information. But if you have to take it straight from the scratch, right? And just try to make whatever it is, you can maybe deduce it. But you will know it would be a lot better if somebody slipped you a note from the person who invented it and says, this is what I had in mind for this, right? Let's get to something a little bit more complicated than a one-use item. Text 8, think about this. This is on a deeper level. Again, we turn to the brilliance of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Take a game like football. By football, he means European football, soccer, right? Some hypothetical visitor from a land to which football has not yet penetrated wants to understand the strange ritual which excites so much passion. You explain the rules of the game, what counts as a foul, what constitutes a goal, and so on. Fine, says the visitor. I now understand the game. What I don't understand is why you get so excited about it, right? In other words, the question is more existential. Fine, you have rules. You see, that kind of stuff you can glean from within the system. But why do you get so excited when somebody hits it into this square with a diamond netting behind it? Why are you so excited? Well, if he hits it that way, hits it that way, yay! Why? I get the rules. I get the how of life, but I don't get the why of life. Right? Here you might have to launch into some larger reflection about games as a ritualized conflict and the role of playing and rehearsing skills needed in actual conflict. You might even suggest that the ritualized conflict reduces the need for actual conflict, the football pitch as a substitute for the battlefield. There's an internal logic of the system, the rules of football by the meaning of the system, but the meaning of the system lies elsewhere. It can only be understood through some sense of the wider human context in which it's set. You can't look at the game and understand the why of the game. You have to understand that human beings have a need for conflict, and this is a way to substitute, which is what ultimately is being played. You have to, in other words, go to a layer further out to understand why kicking it here and not there, and two teams meeting, and the one being from this city and one from that city invokes so much passion. To do this, you have to step outside the system and see why it was brought into being. There is no way of understanding the meaning of football by merely knowing its rules. They tell you how to play, but not why people do so and why they invest in the passions they do. The internal workings of a system do not explain the place the system holds in human lives. The meaning of the system lies outside the system. Therefore, the meaning of the universe lies outside the universe. Only if something or someone outside the universe can give meaning, only something or someone outside the universe can give the meaning to the universe. In other words, as we said, the fabricator has to tell you why. Why did they make this? There's a little video here. It's cute. It doesn't really have to be said, be seen. But imagine I draw a circle here, just a simple circle. And I asked you, what's the meaning of the circle? What's that circle? What is that circle? What's the purpose of that circle? And you say, you don't ask me. You just see a circle, right? But you see me standing there. And you say, you put some lines over the circle. Say, that circle is the sun. And I say, definitively, no, it's not. Right? And you say, okay, maybe it's a lollipop. And I say, no, it's not. Maybe it's an eyeball. And I say, no, it's not. Why? By what right do I have to say that all these very viable options are not what it is? So I'm the one who made it. And I had a reason why I made it. So I can tell you that's all good options. It's not why I made it. So just because something looks good, right, and can fit into this space doesn't mean that that's what it actually is. You need to look at the instruction manual of the fabricator. And in life, what does that mean? You need to look at the Torah. That's why you're here, ladies and gentlemen. Because it turns out the most meaningful pursuit of life is going to be purpose. And the thing that defines purpose cannot be from within the system. It needs to be given to you by its creator. Text 9. Alpayim Shadna Kadma Torah La'ol. The Torah's existence preceded the world by 2,000 years. This is the instruction manual outside of the system. The fabricator's instruction manual. Now we understand who remembers the famous story about Rabbi Akiva and the Roman, where Rabbi Akiva told a Roman comes to Rabbi Akiva and says, text 10. Once the wicked Roman government issued a decree forbidding Jews from studying Torah. Papas ben Yehudi came up, ben Yehuda. This was a what's it called? A convert who had become basically a Roman. Came upon Rabbi Akiva, who was publicly gathering groups and teaching Torah at the risk of his life. He said to him, Akiva, aren't you afraid of the authorities? In other words, stop teaching Torah. Assimilate like I did, and you will live. Right? Does not preservation of life. Oh boy, we're about to lose everybody. It's good. Okay, we have a few minutes. Battery's about to die of the computer, which also means we'll lose the Zoom, but we're coming to the end. So it's perfect timing. He says to Rabbi Akiva, drop Torah and live. So Rabbi Akiva responded, let me tell you a parable, right? This is, by the way, everything the rabbi does. You know, they say, a Gentile answers a question with an answer, right? And a Jew answers a question with a question. Why? Why not? Right? But a rabbi answers a question with a story. And so Rabbi Akiva answers this question with a story. He says, let me tell you a story. A fox was walking along a river and saw fish darting back and forth. And he said to them, why are you fleeing? They answered, from the nets that people have cast. We're living a very dangerous life here. People are trying to kill us. The fish say, that's why we're fleeing and running. Said the fox, why don't you come onto dry land and live with me, just as your ancestors live with mine? You know, in other words, drop the ocean, come join here, and you won't have to be, you won't be pursued by the fishnets. The fish said to him, are you the one that they call the cleverest of animals? You're not clever, you're foolish. If we're in danger even here, in the place that gives us life, how much more so if we would leave it for a place that we cannot survive? The same is true for us, Rabbi Akiva concluded. If we were at risk, even while studying Torah, the source of our life, as it says, for it is your life and the length of your days, how much worse would it be if we abandoned it? Now, here's the thing. The Roman, or in this case, the assimilated Jew, would be correct if life was about whatever you made of it, including a life of meaning. If life was about whatever you made of it, what he is saying is you need to preserve your life at all costs, because what was the purpose of anything you're going to do if you're going to be dead? Right? That ends everything. So if life is about what you put into it, then the Roman's entirely correct. Then you need to abandon anything that could threaten your life, because in it is everything. But if life is about purpose, then it's what Rabbi Akiva says. You're saying leave life by abandoning purpose? Live by abandoning Torah? Then what's life? That is why we have had such a tenacious grip on life. On Torah. And it's what Esther said. If I have to perish, I perish. But I will not abandon my mission. Because purpose trumps all things. We all know it. We all know it. Because every one of us will then have that taste of that thing that is more important to us than life itself. And that's actually the thing that makes life worth living. It's the thing that gives us a great. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to have the spice of life, which is the pleasures and the meanings, etc., etc. But what underpins all of life, it's the raison d'etre. It's the reason that you are. What is the reason that you are? That's ultimately, and that is why this is the epic conclusion, as Gabriel pointed out, to Shlomo HaMelech's existential question at the beginning of Kohelet. He says, if life's not about success and pleasures, and life's not about meaning, then what is the purpose of life? He doesn't leave it unanswered, because that would be nihilistic. He doesn't. Rather, that's the opening salvo to have you rethink your entire perspective of what are you going to pursue in life. And from the get-go, he says, if you're thinking that life's about your pleasurable pursuits, X. And if you think life's about meaningful pursuits, rethink that. It is about meaningful pursuits, but a specific type of meaningful pursuit. Because this is what I think what you were saying, Reb Moshe. It is meaning, but it's a specific type of meaning. It is a meaning that not that I choose to define. It is the meaning that I get from knowing why am I here. Comes Shlomo Melech. The very end of Kohelet is this line: Sof davar hakol nishma. The end of the matter, after everything is considered, is as follows: Et Elokim yira, vet mitzvotav shemor, ki zeh kol hada. Revere God, keep His commandments, because that is the entirety of what it means to be a human. That's our purpose. That's our raison d'etre. Ki zeh kol adam. Unless what you are doing is the very definition of who you are and the reason that you're here, you're not going to find in that true meaning and purpose. I.e., your purpose is the pursuit that you should be engaged in. That the